Welcome everyone to Respectful Foraging with our wonderful, wonderful speaker, Molly Cerridwen. And we are putting on this program. This is a collaboration between the Rural Cap Grow program, which is a program. Rural Cap has been around since 1965. The mission of Rural Cap is to improve the lives of low-income Alaskans. And we put this program on in cooperation with the Tribes Extension Program, which is the cooperative extension for tribes. And that mission is to improve food security and food sovereignty in Alaska for tribes. And welcome back, Molly. She's been a frequent speaker in our webinar series. And just so you know, today's about respectful foraging. And then in 2 weeks, she's doing a second webinar on wild urban foraging. So I know we'll send out all the information so that you can sign up and you won't miss it. All right, so Molly, welcome back. Molly is a wonderful teacher and speaker, and I will let you take it away, my dear.
Diana, Emily, thank you so much for having me. Waka, everyone. My name is Molly Cerridwen of the Yupik and Irish peoples. I would like to honor my mother, Karen Brooks, and grandmother, Rose Hagan of Manly Hot Springs and Takatna and Tanunuk, and honor all of our ancestors. I honor my father, Floyd Brooks, and grandmother, Maxine Badair of Nenana and Oregon and the Blackfoot Reservation. I honor all my grandfathers, all my grandmothers, and all the ancestors around me. And with deep gratitude, I feel their support as I speak today. So it is such a privilege to be broadcasting from the lands of the Kanik tribe of the Dena'ina peoples today. And I'd like us all to take a moment to reflect on the lands that we all reside in and on, and all the resilient peoples that have inhabited it previously for generations. So close your eyes, deepen your breath, and just feel the earth below you. There might be many layers until you get to that dirt connection, but just imagine you've got roots growing down through your legs, through your feet, and into the earth. Take a full breath in, growing down, 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 connecting into the creator of the earth, the all creator. Some might call it God or goddess or the infinite, the universe, divine. So many names for that which creates life. Feel the gratitude for the earth beneath your feet and the preciousness of life that grows here on our earth. This is our earth. Kayana, thank you. So I wanted to start with gratitude today because the first step in respectful harvesting is there in the first word, respect. And how do we respect the land? How do we respect ourselves? How do we respect our children? And then it brought me into the bigger idea of, well, when we start to respect ourselves, we take better care. When we start to respect the land, we steward the land better. When we respect our garden to grow, we tend it and we nurture it. And so respectful foraging is about foraging for plants that we might need as food and medicine, and yet also doing it in a way which honors the land, it honors the plant, and it honors the medicine that it has to offer. So we build gratitude. It's not something you're just, some babies are born with it and are happy, but there's the nature versus nurture. And instead of that being a versus, I think we should nurture nature. And the more that we nurture nature, we're nurturing ourselves because we are not separate from nature. We're all interconnected. And so however that might look in your mind, or if you visualize, systems of being, then what I do has an impact on the next person, which has an impact on the next person. And so when I respectfully forage, I want to take into account all of the other people who've been here before and who've been here after. And by doing that, I'm able to realize that, okay, what do I need to sustain myself for this season, for this plant? Why am I using this plant as medicine or food? And how much am I going to harvest it because of it? Because if you don't know how much you're going to harvest and then you see a huge patch, you might get a little overzealous and then harvest too much. And what we really need to do is plan ahead. We take into account how much we're going to harvest, and then we have to realize we have to clean it, we have to prepare it, and we have to preserve it. And all of that might take more time than the collecting of the plants themselves. So then there's waste involved. And anytime we pick and we take without giving back, and then there's waste that accumulates, that's on us. That's the waste we created, even if it's compostable waste. It's still waste. So only pick what you need. And so this building of gratitude. So we can practice building gratitude just by like little things like, oh, God, the trees are like, the leaves are almost fully open now, right? The fiddleheads are so tall and like barely heads anymore. There's green everywhere, and we're coming out of this, somewhat groggy winter. So there are a lot of things to be grateful for, but it's about switching our mindset about not focusing on all the negative things like this happened to me today, this happened to me, this happened to me. It's more like I got to experience someone actually letting me into traffic today. I got to experience someone helping out my child in an honorable way. I got to experience meeting a new person who is interested in the work I do and have a meaningful exchange of words. Those are all things I'm really grateful for. And that cultivates an attitude of gratitude. Because once you get this attitude of gratitude going, it's really hard to let the negative things weigh us down. And so we respect and honor the land with that gratitude. We give gratitude to the plants, we give gratitude to the animals. And yes, humans are other animals. So please give some gratitude to those in your life that support you. And also please give gratitude to those in your life that might be going through something difficult and don't have the bandwidth to be maybe even themselves right now. And maybe they just need another human who listens. So these are all ways to cultivate gratitude within ourselves. And then honor our elders, honor ourselves. And the more honoring we do of the things and the people and the entities, like these plant entities that help us grow and nourish, and the animal entities that nourish us through the cold winter months, by practicing saying thank you, we can also practice receiving thank yous. And by receiving thank you, it's in any language, right? If we receive the thank you, then we can continue to cultivate a deeper connection and understanding to the peoples on whose land that you're harvesting from. So, as an overall, I express gratitude to the first stewards of the land by taking the time to explore and learn the indigenous plants. By taking the time through trial and error, through deep listening and meditation, through plant medicine, and through our oral traditions, listening, literally being quiet enough and still enough to hear what the plants tell us. The plants will tell you what they're good for. Now we use more visual aids. We look at the leaf shape, the flower shape. Does it have thorns? How do the the stems separate and differentiate from one another. Those are visual cues for identifying the plant. There's also the smell of the plant, a texture. These are all keys. These are all ways that the plant is communicating with you. So a rose is super healing, yet it has thorns, because unconditional love, which rose represents, isn't about just like letting everything brush past you with no regard for who you are or what you care about. Rose is unconditional love. So yeah, it has thorns because it needs to protect itself. Just like sometimes we need to put up boundaries in our personal life to protect ourselves from those. And those are our little thorns, right? So this is one aspect of bringing gratitude and thankfulness and respect, which respect is honor. Honor is respect, and it takes time to earn respect. But you can always honor someone. You can always honor yourself. And if you are true to yourself, true to your word, practicing saying thank you, then this attitude of gratitude becomes a part of your life. And then that then translates into activities you enjoy. So if you're interested about foraging, then how this directly relates into foraging is so many ways. I have them all listed, but there's even more ways than I could explain in this webinar. We have gratitude is like a seed inside of us. We must water it with consistent practice. So find any gratitude practice that you enjoy and stay consistent, because practice makes progress. That is true for plant identification, right? You might think my first talking point would be identify the plant. And yeah, that is pretty high on the list. Knowledge and identification, number one in almost everything. It's know your plants, right? But before I get into that, I would like to just mention that I would like to honor and respect the Tribes Extension for inviting me here. And of course, Rural Cap and Emily and everyone on your team, because you are all amazing. And I would also like to send my regards and honor and deepest gratitude to the Kayani Sisters Council, for they created a living document, which they will edit and update as necessary. And it's called the Respectful Harvesting Guidelines. These guidelines are dedicated to the memory of the late Dr. Rita Blumenstein, who I called Grandma Rita, and I know many did. My older sister Jennifer was able to train directly with her for many years, and I was only able to train a couple years before she passed away. But there is a quote in the book, and I couldn't find if it was from Dr. Rita, Grandma Rita, but this quote is, "We hope in following these guidelines, we can maintain for the next 7 generations the land on which we live, the foods and plants that sustain us. We believe that everything is connected. We are all interconnected with the plants, lands, and each other. By further developing ways of protecting our resources, we are also healing ourselves and our lands." So that goes back to what I was saying before. This beautiful quote in less words explained what I was speaking on before. We have everything connected. If we are in our right space, if we are healthy and happy and working towards a goal, then we are able to do the work that needs to be done in the world. And if harvesting and processing plants and learning medicinal plants and the wild plants that you can eat and use as food and medicine, then yeah, these are the guidelines. So I would like to mention, since I mentioned our first stewards, I would like to mention that we are all stewards of the land. We are all here, humans, individuals on Earth, that whether you step out every single day or when you can, you are walking on this earth and you are a part of the earth. So please, please realize that you're a steward of the land. And as we walk this earth, please be kind to those around you. We don't know what anyone else is going through. And so, with that being said, number one, knowledge and identification. Know your plants before foraging anything, before harvesting anything. Educate yourself on local plants. Know for absolute certainty that that is the plant. Identify using color, texture, scent, the location it's growing, and other indicators throughout the season. I myself was trained from the time I was a little girl as an herbalist. I live my summers in a wall tent in the backyard of my mother's best friend's house, and I just worked her garden. And she said one plant a year. You have to learn, if you're interested, you learn one plant a year and you follow it through every single season of its life, even if you have to dig for it. So you know exactly what that plant looks like at every single stage. So, because in fall, you might be trampling through and find dead vegetation of a spring green that you weren't able to find before in that region. You know, make mental note about it, put it in your journal. That's information. Information is key. And we can't learn all of the information from books. It's just not possible. We can learn a lot of information through books, but working with a professional, working with um, elders, honoring our teachers, then also on the side of identification, there are lookalikes. So you might think you know for certain that this is the plant. But say it's growing in water and it's not really marshy where Angelica grows, but this plant happens to be in like a marshy, but it looks the same. And then you realize once you've opened it that it's water hemlock and it's deadly. So that is a very real life scenario that is deadly. And there are other plants that they mimic the look of edible medicinal plants, yet are not. So we also learn the inedible plants. We also learn poisonous plants. And so if in doubt, do not harvest. If in doubt, just don't even touch it. Take pictures. Take pictures on top, from underneath. We've all, most of us, if we don't have a smartphone, we have someone maybe with us has a smartphone. So even if you have to pull out the old Polaroid for a foraging expedition, then, take photos, and then you're going to be able to get, also take photos of how the leaves bifurcate off the stem, or how the clusters of flowers, if it has flowers. Those are all really good ways for positive identification. And then back to seeking guidance. So we've got guidance from our elders and our plant teachers, humans that teach plants. But then we also have plant teachers that are plants that teach us, right? So I'm differentiating there, right? I have plant teachers that I've worked with for years that are plants that have taught me so much through my years of working with them. They've taught me their favorite way of being extracted, of being processed, and it's been through trial and error, but also through guidance with human counsel, elders, oral traditional stories that go way back. And I'm like, ooh, I want to try that. So then I'll experiment along that route. And so by utilizing local indigenous knowledge, we have an opportunity to build a closer connection to our lands and to understand the plants better. Because an interesting thing, Alaska's huge, we all know this, but a plant could be poisonous in one area of Alaska, but not in another area of Alaska. And a plant could be poisonous if prepared one way and not poisonous if it's prepared another way. And the dose makes the poison. So some really strong medicine could actually be considered poisonous, but if you take a tiny, tiny bit, it is actually the remedy for the ailment. And so this is just stuff we learn over time of working with plants, learning plants, and it can feel really big. It's like the whole plant kingdom, and there's so many plants, and they do so many things. But if we think about it simply, I'm not saying you have to take 1 year per plant. Maybe it's the first plant that calls out to you and you spend 3 months with it. And then you might be called back to work with it later in the fall. Or maybe it's 2 plants that call out to you and you work with them for a whole year. But just like deeply understanding the plant and where it grows, how it grows, so where you could even tell if there was like a parasite that had caused something to create an abnormality within the plant, in which case you wouldn't want to harvest that particular plant. So hands-on learning is the best. So gather with an expert, an elder, or an experienced person. That is critical for safe, sustainable harvesting. And so on that note, I wanted to talk about this webinar being called Respectful Foraging. And I'm also interchanging the word harvesting. Sometimes people use them interchangeably, but there is a difference. So foraging is the act of harvesting that, like, say you're on a hike and you didn't bring enough for everyone to eat dinner that night. As you walk, you you forage for the plants that you visibly see. And so it's like you take 10 steps, pick one plant. It's really easy not to over harvest when you're foraging and your group is small. You can go off trail, so you're foraging for your immediate needs. Harvesting, on the other hand, is when you harvest more than you need in that immediate moment. And so you're going to do something like share with your elders. You're going to prepare it, being like dry it, tincture it, do some sort of, maybe bake jelly if it's berries, or whatever you want to do, however you prepare it, or preserve it, which berries would also fall under that if you're canning the berries. So that harvesting is harvesting more than you yourself could possibly use in that day. And so that's why it's not just about the knowledge and identification, it's also about knowing how long things last. Like fresh greens are not the same that you pick outside, are not going to be the same as what you get in the grocery store. You need to process them very, very quickly, or they lose moisture very, very quickly and lose their nutrients, which is why we're picking them. We have an abundance of antioxidants in our food that grows here in Alaska. So yes, knowledge and identification is important, but also realizing that when we're harvesting for our families, and then also as possibly gifts to those teachers. So when we take or ask permission to learn from a teacher, from an elder, the Kayani sisters say, where possible, seek guidance from elder women, as they are the traditional gatherers. And I've mentioned this in previous webinars, but women actually do have a genetic advantage. And I wasn't able to give the scientific reason, but it's because of the X chromosomes, and it's called tetrachromacy. And we actually have a perception of a wider range of subtle colors, especially in the red and green spectrum. So like you could put 50 shades of green, and most women would be able to tell you that all those 50 shades of green are actually different colored green. But a lot of men might say, well, like half of those look like the same color green. And so with red and the green spectrum, red being poisonous colors, poisonous berries, things that are deadly, it makes sense that women as harvesters and gatherers, we would have developed this ability to see more depth in color. So when I'm talking about plants, sometimes I'm talking about a yellow green or like a purple green and nettle, or like a neon green and green onion. There's these different shades of green. And when you're able to learn them, you can look out on a forest, even as you're driving, and be like, that's raspberry green. Like, oh, those are aspen. Like there are different colors within that. But for all the fellas out there, don't be discouraged, because you can train your brain. Like, nothing is plastic. We are neuroplastic. So we are able to learn new ways of thinking, and we can learn to identify that. So men too, don't be, but that's from a study from the University of Washington, since I haven't cited that source in the past. And so when we seek guidance from our elders, it may take several visits or several years. So express your gratitude for the ancestors' knowledge, and for knowledge your teachers share. Anything they share, please thank them. Respect their traditions. And it's customary to bring sacred plants, foods, and other gifts to your teachers as a way of showing appreciation and honoring them. So another way to show respect. It doesn't need to be anything big or grand. Some of the most appreciated gifts I've ever given or received were very small. It was just like, oh my gosh, you thought of me and you picked this plant for me. And I'm like, wow, thank you, thank you. So then it's this reciprocity of generosity. And when we live in a world of generosity, then there is abundance. Now, when we go out into the wild and we forage, we harvest thoughtfully and honorably. And that means that not only plants provide essential food for animals, but the roots interact with the fungal mycelial network in the soil. So they're actually communicating to each other through the mycelial network. And this is a huge relationship to the rest of the ecosystem. So there are a couple of different ways of saying, quantifying, how much do I take? What is the amount? What's the proper amount when I'm blueberry picking or when I'm picking fireweed greens? So this modern scientific consensus is called the rule of three, or the rule of thirds. And that is to harvest no more than 1/3 of a yield. I don't personally agree with that, because that was not how I was taught. I was taught the fairy harvest from my herbal mentor. So the fairy harvest is because we did a lot of herbal wild crafting, meaning we would craft herbal products from wild harvested medicinal plants. So we have a 1/5 rule. So we leave 1/5 for the elders, 1/5 for the animals, 1/5 for the plant health, so that it can propagate and continue to grow. And then 1/5 for the fairies. So we only harvest 1/5 of that. And then that allows, so you look at a patch, you make sure there's plenty around, because you don't want to pick the only blueberry patch in a patch of other dense tundra shrubbery, right? Or low-lying trees. If you pick that only blueberry bush, honestly, what I would do is I would shake the blueberry bush and try to smush as many of those blueberry seeds into the ground, because that's another part of stewarding the land, is we want our spaces that we cultivate from to grow. So yeah, we take only what we need and no more. So then some harvesters say 10 to 20% of plant yield is appropriate, which would be like a 1/10 or 1/5, like depending on how you look at it. In urban areas, which I'll go into next webinar, it's going to be a whole lot higher because there's a whole lot more people. So the farther out you can get and off of the trail, very important. That being said, know where you're planning to go harvesting, right? We don't want to harvest on someone's land. We don't want to harvest on native lands where they are planning their fall harvest for. So we need to research where we're going to harvest, know what's in season. Then we can get the permission from the sources that we need to and be able to harvest ethically, because otherwise it's stealing someone else's food. Because there's lots of open land. There's lots of BLM land. There's lots of tribal land. And if you're connected to a tribe, then you can get permission from your tribe to harvest off that land. You can go as deep in there as you want. So I would like to, so ask for permission. Land use, find out who owns, and ask, because that is also safety. People can get very protective of their land and their animals that are on their land. So be aware of wildlife, and out of respect, do not harvest at or near cemeteries or other sacred places. Those are not your places. Those are for the dead. Those are for the resting souls and our ancestors to inhabit. Be aware of your surroundings and surrender yourself to the supreme knowledge of nature. So listen, like take out the headphones, listen to the land, hear the birds, hear the bugs. And talking about with our elders, we respect traditions, customary to bring gifts, but please understand that some knowledge is meant to be shared, while some knowledge is meant to be protected. So don't pry, just listen well. And more secrets will be unfolded the deeper you listen. So we can practice reciprocity by considering what you can give back, like to the plant teachers. So we talked about giving back to our elders and the teachers in our lives that educate us on harvesting and plants and identification. But what about our relationship with Mother Earth, the divine, God, goddess, whatever you want to call this energy that runs through all of us, right? And that where life will find a way, even in the most extreme circumstances. So we can practice reciprocity by maybe giving a gift. We can sage, we can smudge, we can leave a little bit of tobacco, we could leave a strand of hair, we could leave a special rock. We could bring a small little vial of whatever medicine we made with that plant. And also we can sing songs, we can pray in gratitude, and we can also do it practically by picking up garbage we see and removing invasive plant species. So when we learn about identifying plants, we're also going to learn about invasive plant species that have come up from construction projects and reseeding projects. Currently, they're trying to work on it, and I worked on a project years ago that was trying to mitigate that, the Rural Village Seed Production Project, and unfortunately, it's been an interesting journey trying to get 70% of the seeds that they use for construction laydown. It's really difficult to get 70% of that mixture to be Alaskan wildflower seeds. And so we're getting milk thistle. Milk thistle shouldn't grow up in Alaska. It's invasive here. We're getting the white clover, not to be, I think it's called sweet clover actually, but it is a white clover that doesn't look like the clover that grows in our lawn. It's long, it's along our roadways, and we've got milk vetch. Vetch definitely shouldn't be here. Every time I'm harvesting, I am ripping milk vetch because it will suffocate trees. And if you don't know what milk vetch is, look it up, because you might have some in your lawn and you might want to rip it out because it's real easy to rip out. So I wanted to show you something that I might bring with my harvesting toolkit to add as an offering. So I have my abalone smudging with some cedar. I have some sage and palo santo here, some medicinal plants, some cattail, some nasturtium seeds that were given to me by an elder. She said they were really old. I tried growing one last year. It didn't work out. I've got some of the sacred red clay from Kauai, the red dirt earth, and then I've got a different varietal of cedar. So I could just take a little bit and, as a thank you, place it in front of the plant. And that's it. Just to do, it doesn't have to be anything too intense or too elaborate. I mean, if you like the drama, the flair, do an interpretive dance of thank you for this plant, if that's your thing. But, and I'd love to see it. Honestly, we should start that. But I would like to say that with these, basic guidelines and having people that you can contact to get information from. And if you can't find people, there's, we can engage in videos, stories, dictionary resources, online classes, this webinar as resources to learn. So listening and learning from the elder stories can also help you prepare and develop your own practices. So practices on gathering, practices on how to prepare what you've gathered. So let's take a moment, and I have some slides that I brought, or that's Emily or someone is going to play for me. Thank you for playing them for me.
Molly, while we get that set up, here's a question. What if you're new to Alaska and you don't know any Alaska Native elders, or you don't have people you can start foraging with? What would you do? Do you have any advice?
So I'm not a social media girly, but I have heard there are cool Facebook groups for that. I would attend, well, in August, South Central Foundation is having a traditional healing workshop, and you could come to that, and me and Emily will be there. And it's South Central Foundation, so supporting the Indigenous peoples on their healthcare journey. And they have a traditional healing program allowing traditional healers to integrate within the modern medical healthcare system, thus creating a kinship, which they're using information and knowledge from both sides, Indigenous healing and Western modern healthcare. So that is, so the first picture, so that would be my answer to that. I am available. I am not consistent in replying, but a lot of people you might find are pretty secretive about their harvesting spots. So start slow. Try not to be too overly enthusiastic, because then they'll just think you want to pick all their berries. Or because if someone shows you their spot, it's an unspoken rule. You never show anyone else that spot. They only showed it to you. So it's not your spot to share then with other people. And so often these spots are passed down through generations. So I learned of a lot of the spots I harvest from my family, because we harvested from those spots. And we bring very few people to those spots. So that in mind, reach out on Facebook. Their UAF has an ethnobotany program. It's amazing. I got to guest teach, and 2 years ago, and then again this year virtually. I think it's about 6 months of online coursework and then a 1 week or 2 week stay in Bethel, identifying the plants in person with an ethnobotanist, Lisa Strecker, who's the professor, and she's great. So yeah, that is a resource that, if you can apply for the UAF funding, or if you have the funding on your own to go, then definitely that is a great start. And I know a lot of people through the ethnobotany program. Well, some were on the Kiani Sisters Council. I think the majority of the graduates from the first round helped write the Kiani Sisters Council gathering, respectful harvesting guidelines. And so yeah, this is a great resource, and it is a living document. So it will grow and change. And especially as modern medicine and modern science is starting to validate what Indigenous peoples have been saying for generations. And that is, this plant works this way, but you have to do it this way. And they'd be like, that plant doesn't do anything. And then they started testing these plants. And wow, they started finding some truths. And now we've opened that door, this ethnobotany door, Indigenous knowledge, and it is being recorded. And these plants are being studied more in depth for practical applications in modern day life. So then next slide. Okay, so I wanted to show you two different versions of fireweed, right? We've got on the right, the fireweed is in that last asparagus stage, bright red stalk. The leaves that's about as tall as I would harvest fireweed before I would say, let's let it grow another month and harvest just the leaves, because the stalks can get kind of stringy. People say it tastes like asparagus. I do not. I think it tastes delicious. It tastes delicious. I like it with butter and garlic. But it has the consistency of asparagus when cooked correctly. And so I think that's where people think of it as asparagus. And it's also one of the ways I can ID a young fireweed is it's got a red shaft. So if it's not fireweed and it looks like a fireweed, but it doesn't have the redness and it's less than an inch, it's not fireweed. So we have to be aware of that. And then in the left-hand picture, that is what I would call a foraged salad. I was just out for a walk with my nibblings, my niece and nephew, and this is a mix, and everything grows wild here in Alaska. So if anyone can point out any of the plants that they can see, but there is fireweed, just the leaves in them. So that's that filled up about half a salad bowl. Yep, chickweed's in there in the corner. We've got Devil's Club buds, and I had actually pickled them, so they're a little bit soft. I was able to to mince them up a bit. Since I'm close to the screen, I can actually see. Yes. Yep, some goose tongue. I got some wild chives, and then ooh, yeah, and I am herbs are what my family passed on. Oh, Indian rhubarb. Does your family call that cow parsley or cow parsnip?
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay, yeah. No, it's not in this picture. But you can also see from this picture that all the different greens. There's also some nettle in the background. It's in the underlayer. So this is just an example of how one plant can look different at different stages in life, and then also how the different greens can help you identify what is what. So next slide, we've got more plants. Oh, so that's my mama and her doggy. And I've learned a lot from my mom over the years. And this is her standing in front of that cow parsley, or cow parsnip, or yuna. I'm I'm apologize for mispronouncing that. But you can see right above her head is the tallest fireweed I've ever seen in my life. So she is 4'9". And so this was standing well above her by at least 2 feet. Um, in this instance, I actually harvested leaves from this. It was down an old abandoned road. And what I would do is I would grab the head where right below the flowers, and then I would strip downward, grabbing just the leaves and leaving the stalk until I have a handful. And then I release everything gently. The plant will continue to grow. You can still harvest the flowers for jam making, for salads, whatever you like. And there's still enough greenery to produce the oxygen exchange to create chlorophyll. And you've still harvested a whole handful of fireweed without killing the plant. So that's my favorite way. And that's why if that other fireweed picture, if they had gotten just a little bit bigger, I would have said, I'm going to wait because I would like just the leaves. Oh, I switched something. Oh, and next picture, please. And then this is a photograph of dwarf fireweed. So actually, it is fireweed. It only has 1 to 2 blooms, but it's also called river beauty. You'll find them along riverbanks. It's one of my favorite forms of fireweed. And to me, it makes the sweetest hydrosol or essential oil that any of the fireweeds make. But if you notice at the base, the leaves aren't quite like normal fireweed. Like the flower looks like a fireweed flower, but it's much bigger, like 3 to 4 times the size. And the leaves are denser, broader, and a darker green. Next slide. Some red clover, an often called weed here in Alaska, grows everywhere. It is one of my favorite women's health remedies, not only for internal use, but also for external use. So anytime if you or a loved one has ever experienced mastitis, you can make a poultice of this to help reduce the swelling and to help clear the ducts within the breast tissue. So that is a favorite. It is the female ally, as is raspberry. So next slide. Valerian. So I show you this picture because this is actually like pretty deep in Hatcher Pass. And valerian, it's not used, its aerial parts aren't really used very often. It's the root that everyone is after. But it's endangered in Alaska. So I would recommend not harvesting it unless you are harvesting a very tiny amount and only for like a personal purpose of like smelling it, feeling it, learning it, and then being with it, like learning where it grows and then sitting with it. My mentor, Deborah McCorkle, I'd like to speak her name. She has passed since 2017 and I love her greatly. She taught me a meditation when I was 6. And so if everyone could just close their eyes for just a moment and imagine this with me. So you pick a plant that you want to learn about and you stare at it. And then you stare at it and you ask permission. You say, please, will you teach me what you have to share? I want to learn about you. Please, and I will, anything I can do to allow you to teach me, I would appreciate that. And then you imagine yourself getting smaller and smaller and smaller with each prayer to learn, each quest to grow. You get smaller and smaller and smaller until you imagine yourself smaller than the smallest part of the base of that plant. And then you notice a door. And then you go up to that door and you knock on that door. And you'll know right away if the plant lets you in. And if you feel any sort of resistance, say, okay, it's not time. And then you back away and you come back to your size. You come back to this reality. If that plant then lets you in its door, then it's giving you permission through meditation to learn about it. And so valerian is so sacred and very, very potent medicinally that, and as it's an endangered species, I would say, especially if you want to work with valerian, please ask permission. So with that, let's do the next slide. So lingonberry, low bush cranberry, often called. And yeah, I just wanted to show you some different, this is actually pictures my sister sent me. The picture on the left is her picking them, and it's mixed in with bearberry. The picture on the right, it has some stems and leaves. I call that a dirty catch. I'm very much a fan of clean catch, so I will meticulously clean my plants as I'm harvesting, because I know that when I have to clean it at home and prepare it and then preserve it, it's going to take a lot less time to do if I've done that in the field and like thrown all the plant scraps that aren't medicinal, that are the dead, scraps and things, and just keep the medicinal plants. So next slide. There's my mama again. And it cut off the picture of the dandelion at the end, at the bottom, which is very sad because this was the largest dandelion and dandelion root I've ever harvested in my life. But my mom is holding up one that's almost as big as the one on the picnic table. Dandelion is one of my favorite foods. And honestly, I think if the world were to come to an end tomorrow, say that happened, I think dandelion would be the plant that would save the world. Every single part of it is edible. It grows everywhere. And there's many varietals. You can make coffee out of it. Dandelion root coffee, actually very good. Dandelion wine, dandelion beer. Both of those are used medicinally to help people wean off alcohol addiction, because alcohol addiction is one of the only addictions that can kill you if you stop cold turkey. So that's how it's used medicinally in the herbal world, not to explicitly get drunk. It's to actually allow, by creating an alcoholic beverage using either the flowers or the roots, so a wine or a beer, it allows the medicine of the dandelion to get into the liver, which the liver filters the alcohol, and then thus heal the liver while allowing a little bit of alcohol to be absorbed by the individual to whom they have an addiction to the alcohol. So then that can be weaned off, and that would be the medicinal approach to weaning for alcoholics or those with trouble drinking. Next slide.
And Molly, just letting you, I know we've only gone through about half your slides, but we got 3 minutes. I don't want to rush you. I mean, feel free to keep talking, and if people have to go, that's fine. And we can catch up you can catch up later and watch the end on
Okay.
YouTube.
Oh yeah, I totally understand. Okay, so you can just slide through it if everyone wants to look at pictures while I talk. That'd be great. So I would like to end by saying that choose our words carefully, right? So even the harvesting versus foraging. If I choose whichever word I choose, those means something different. And one word might mean one thing to one person and another to another. And so language provides a connection to the land and to the ancestors. So it's important to learn the language of the land and all the peoples to engage with local Alaska Native language. For those whose ancestors are of this land, practice introducing yourself in your own language. And that might be just to the plants. Allow the ancestors to surround you and connect you to the land even deeper. Practice this in your skills and confidence to talk about food and plants in positive and respectful ways. That brings honor to all Indigenous people, all Indigenous knowledge. And for those whose ancestors are not of this land, you can learn the language, the local language, but also perhaps find that indigenous. Oh, here, this Hatcher Pass picture. This is me when I was 9 harvesting, and then me as an adult drumming in Hatcher Pass, and just how much has changed over the years. My sister took that pic, so I just thought I'd share it if anyone's been to Hatcher in a while. It's changed a lot. So for those whose ancestors are not of this land, recognize that we are all of this earth. And so please don't feel ashamed or frightened or unworthy to learn a language that might not be your ancestors. We can still respectfully learn the names and phrases like waka, hello, in Yupik, or kleana, thank you, in Yupik. And my family, our medicine was plant medicine. And so that's what we learned. And we lost our language through the colonization and all of the terrible things that happened with that. But every family has their medicine. Every family has kept sacred knowledge. That could be language, that could be art, that could be bead making, skin sewing. It could be oral traditions, stories, songs. So whoever you find that has this little, it's Amrita, this like little bit of golden knowledge, that is where we get the most honest truth from. So follow your instincts. If something doesn't sit right with you, maybe it's not the right person to learn from. You know, there are people who use plants that are not edible and make things that are not healthy. There are bad magic practitioners. There are evil shamans, you know, if you want to say that. So just so you know, protect yourself. We protect our lands, we protect our future, and we protect the next 7 generations and more to come. So I just want to say thank you for your time, Kayana. Please respect thoughtfully, and I honor you for being here, Kayana.
Thanks so much, Molly. There's lots of thank yous in the chat. Harry in particular said the phrase reciprocity of generosity resonated, and I think I would say that did with me as well. And there is one question, and it's, is smudging or making offerings a reciprocity practice that is specific to Alaska Natives? Or is that something, can you tell us more about that and how you've learned about that?
Yeah, smudging. Wow. I didn't realize it was just something I grew up with in my house. So I didn't realize how many cultures smudge, and almost every single culture smudges. So even Indigenous Alaskans would use different smudging plants. So cedar, spruce, Labrador tea, muskeg tea. These would be purification plants, wormwood, stinkweed, Artemisia frigida, which is our Arctic sage. All of those would be burned to cleanse an area. And that travels all the way down into the Americas, across Canada, down into Mexico, down into South America. So I just came back from South America, and they use mapacho, which is their form of tobacco. And they actually smudge it, like you have to puff it like a cigar because it won't stay lit, but you puff it and you waft it over yourself, much like a traditional sage smudge. The popular white sage it is going extinct, and people in the New Age community are buying it out, and it is not a good thing. So if you can avoid buying white sage unless it's from a certified wild, like organic farm, there's a couple loopholes in the terming, but we don't want wild harvested white sage because their numbers are in the decline. And that grows in the Colorado, New Mexico, arid desert region, northern Mexico, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah. And so when I lived in Colorado, I actually started a white sage garden out in my forest garden because I rented so that I could help the population grow. Now, every culture, even if we look at the Catholic religion, which we just had a huge funeral, and I'm sorry for all those who honor that religion and have lost that leader, but they not only sprinkled holy water, but they incensed him. They incensed the body of the Pope. That is smudge. Frankincense, myrrh, all of these ancient incenses, they purify. And what ethnobotanical medicine has found is that when you burn sage in a room that has an airborne virus, right? Like say COVID was airborne. It actually reduces the number of out of virus particles in the air because they get connected to the smoke and they fall to the floor. And so in shamanic traditions, before a shaman would enter the abode of someone who was ill, they would smudge it completely. So the whole room was filled with smudge. And then completely the whole time the medicine person does their work, they're constantly smudging. But the medicine person never got sick. And so they thought, oh, wow, magical powers. The medicine person knew it was the plants. And yeah, they do still want to keep up, like, yes, we do have the knowledge of the plants, and in a way that is magic, but we're protecting ourselves by smudging. And so it's a protection. It's also, some people use sweetgrass that invites in sweetness, sweet spirits. And yeah, and cedar is also very purifying. Red clay has been used for, I mean, since they've first found mummies, they found people caked in red clay because of the red ochre, and that we're born of blood and we go back to blood. So all of those smudges are like smudging our soul clean in a way.